Hello everyone, welcome to the presentation. So I'm going to talk about why our emotional experiences change with age and what might be the underlying representational and computational changes happening at the neural level. So according to Bayesian brain hypothesis, we know that all our experiences are laden with certain amount of uncertainty and emotions are no exceptions. So in our previous work, we showed that emotional representations are modulated by the uncertainty. And one way to picture this is when uncertainty is low, we have a clear distinction between the emotions. But when it is variable or high, our perception and experience of emotions can vary a lot. Paradoxically, in aging is associated with such idiosyncrasies in emotional response. So, can this change in emotion, in uncertainty perception, be a reason for that? This carries immense burden since it is often associated with impaired decision making, biased recall of memories, as well as other impaired cognitive functions for the older individuals. So, why do these changes take place? Several theories have been put forward to explain these changes, of which positivity effect is the most prevalent one. However, due to the absence of strong theoretical framework, it fails to explain the contextual nature of this bias of older people preferring positive over negative emotions, and also it fails to link the behavioral findings with that of the neural idiosyncrasies strongly. So in this work, rather than seeing these changes as bias towards a particular class of emotions, we wanted to first establish whether these behavioral variabilities in the older individuals are consistent across a range of emotional tasks or not. So to do that, we explored three sets of data: the facial emotion recognition and the emotional reactivity data from CAMCAN dataset, and the continuous rating data which we collected on a movie stimulus, which is the same stimulus used for our neuroimaging participants. So for the facial emotion recognition, individuals were asked to accurately predict the emotions from these of each any of these six categories from faces, and as we can see, the individual responses for older people were significantly more variable than that of the younger individuals, and between group variability for each category of this emotion was also higher in older individuals than young. Going to the next paradigm, the emotional reactivity. Here, participants had to rate small video clips based on how negative as well as how positive they felt for each of the clips. So there were three conditions: neutral, positive, and negative. And as we can see, although the ratings of the negatively rated clips and negatively rated negative clips and positively rated positive clips had no significant difference, their variability in the ratings were always higher for the older individuals for all of these six conditions. So it's really interesting that from these two different set of tasks with discrete and dynamic stimuli, the accuracy of subjective rating was or did not serve as a good predictor of the emotional changes, but a consistent increase in the behavioral variability was observed in the old compared to the young. So how do we explain this? In our previous work, we showed that uncertainty about what's going to happen can explain complex emotion dynamics. And we defined this uncertainty by outcome uncertainty, where participants had to continuously rate the movie based on how uncertain they felt at each point. Now, can this uncertainty processing in old explain the variability that we were observing in the emotional tasks? So to check that, we looked at the representational like we tried to answer this question from the representational level as well as the computational level. So we used a suspenseful movie called Bang You're Dead as our stimulus, and we collected the arousal, valence, and uncertainty ratings from six groups of individuals who were demographically matched with the neuroimaging participants from the CAMCAN. So as expected, we saw that the arousal for the older individuals were much lower than that of the young, However, the valence was highly correlated and were not it was not the case that the valence was always high throughout the movie compared to the young, but the uncertainty was the least correlated among all three and most variable. Now, coming to the neural level, from our previous work, we had seen a hierarchical organization in the prefrontal regions in encoding this uncertainty, which modulated their emotional experience, which we gave as arousal. And when we modeled it using a BHR, Bayesian hierarchical regression, we found that it was not the valence, but the uncertainty which could explain the differential brain activation is in this set of regions between the two groups. So just to highlight here, of these prefrontal regions, it was the lateral orbitofrontal cortex which was at the top of the hierarchy and had the most abstract representation of the uncertainty. So we wanted to see, since we already had this set of regions predefined, we wanted to see how the connectivity profiles related with that of the evolving uncertainty. And performing a multidimensional scaling between the ISFC and the uncertainty, we found that in case of both DMN and FPN, the connectivity was reduced in old with the evolving uncertainty. Now, taking these findings ahead, we implemented a computational model. We implemented a hierarchical Gaussian filter model, which we had previously used to show that young individuals' uncertainty ratings could naturally emerge from their valence ratings in a predictive architecture using this model, right? So just to explain the model, what it does is it continuously updates the belief on the incoming evidence, and it computes three levels of uncertainty: the outcome uncertainty, the informational uncertainty, and the environmental uncertainty. So at the lowest level, we have the uncertainty on the valence, since we are giving the valence of the two groups as inputs. And on the second level, we have the uncertainty on the rate of change of valence. And on the third level, we have the volatility of the model. Now, we tested out various models and we selected the best model by the highest LME, and we iterated over few parameters which we thought could be neurally informed. For example, kappa is the coupling parameter between like between the levels, which we reduced for the older individuals. Omega denotes the variance for the valence, which we increased for the older individuals, and theta is the overall volatility, which we decreased for the older individuals. And the winning model actually had reduced kappa for the two levels, increased omega and decreased theta, which when we see their volatility trajectory, we can see that uh, the overall synchronicity that we had observed with the volatility with that of the uncertainty in young is not there in old. With qualitatively judging the volatility trajectory, we can say there are much more frequent changes of smaller magnitude compared to that of the older individuals. Now, can these can this volatility trajectory or the this computation of uncertainty be related to the representation of uncertainty? So to do that, we implemented a hidden Markov model. We had already, as I mentioned, that the orbitofrontal cortex was at the top of the hierarchy in the representation of uncertainty. So we checked the model update or the belief update we got from the HF with that of the young and old's LOFC and MOFC hidden state transitions, and we found which was where it was more stable and synced with the updates in case of young. In old, that gets unstable with much faster state transitions, and it is not at all synced with the model update. But that is not the case in visual cortex. This is a good control because now we can say it's not happening because of perceptual uncertainty. which is the same in case of the both young and old. Now, the crucial inference from the model was that older individuals exhibit increased variability in computing the valence across time. Can we see the signatures of this on the bold variability as well? So to do that, we implemented a Bayesian hierarchical regression model where we modeled the bold SDs or standard deviations from these chosen ROIs 10 regions of interest for these two groups and two conditions, the movie and the resting state. And in this model, all sources of variations were taken into account, that is within individuals, within group, between conditions and within conditions. We found that the behavioral variability is actually manifested or reflected by the neural variability in the movie, but not in the rest. So the movie had much more higher evidence and significantly different neural variability between the two groups when compared with that of the rest. Since from the behavioral as well as the neural modeling, we saw that the computations of uncertainties affected in case of the LOFC, is the latent state structure of the entire movie also affected. So to do that, we implemented a fate or temporal fate, which is a dimensional reduction technique, and we indeed find that the the sequential structure of the movie, which is preserved in case of the young, is disrupted in case of the old, and only preserved at the end of the movie, which is also reflected in their behavior. So to summarize, miscomputation of uncertainty underlies the behavioral variability of older people in emotional experience. Their behavioral variability is underpinned by their prefrontal neural variability, and it is also reflected by the unstable latent state structure in the PFC. Thank you so much for listening to the talk. Please feel free to send me any question you have regarding this. And that's all for now.